Hi, I'm Tim. Welcome to Watchbox, and thanks for logging on. If you love this watch, email me, tmosso@thewatchbox.com. It's in the description below. Your purchase and pricing email question line for buying this or any watch you see on any Watchbox platform. Please reach out to me directly for pricing. Email tmosso@thewatchbox.com. Back in early 2018, then new Breitling CEO, Georges Kern, dictated that from now on, Breitling chronographs with tone-on-tone dials, that is two tones, silver and blue in this case, would be the in-house calibers. So what we have here today is the 2018 update to the long-running Navitimer, but in 46 millimeters. This is the in-house caliber Breitling Navitimer B01 Chronograph 46. The watch is 46 millimeters in diameter. It measures 14.7 millimeters thick from lug to lug, and this is just the case. It's 52.3 millimeters, and from end link to end link, it is 54.4 millimeters with a 24 millimeter spacing between the lugs. We'll throw it on my wrist, which is 16 centimeters in circumference, and I'm going to opine that this is one for the old guard. If you liked Schneider family era Breitling watches like the Hercules and the Super Avenger, this is the Navitimer for you, because as with those traditional modern era Breitlings, this is large and it's of high polish, which means it makes a statement. It's a brash watch. It's very visible. But remember, you're going to need a wrist of my size or larger, 16 centimeters circumference or larger, in order to wear this watch non-ironically. Throwing it under closer scrutiny, you can see that it's nicely equipped with a bracelet. This is the Navitimer bracelet. The Navitimer bracelet features 7 links. The Pilot bracelet features 5. That's how you can tell them apart. There's a little conforming end link that traces the slope of the lugs and then the arc of the case, so it's nicely integrated. All of high polish. There are gaps on the bottom to aerate the wrist on a hot day. The removable links are fixed by screws. We have a single full deployment clasp with a clamshell lock. And then internally, there are 2 different ways to size this bracelet. You can see with a strap tool, you have this little slider with a couple of increments built into it. It has a few detents, so you can actually move the bracelet in and out by that means. But then if you look carefully, you can also see there are some divots drilled into the flank of the interior clasp, so you can move this slider, but you can also change the anchoring point altogether using those divots. So this bracelet is more adjustable than it appears at first glance. Taking a quick look at the case, familiar. Large, but it's definitely the Navitimer. Everything's in high polish. You can see the mid case is fairly narrow right here, and it has squared off lug ends, and that's the way it's been since the first Navitimers in the 50s. We have a little bit of a transitional bevel that's molded into the case. The case is probably stamped in construction, so you have this stamped in profile with a very narrow lug hood and then this bevel on the side. The case actually steps back in profile, so when it's actually on the wrist, it does look thinner than it is. We have vintage-inspired pump-style pushers, which are fairly standard fare on Navitimers, a Breitling branded crown, and then we have a bezel whose edge is knurled with a combination of satin in the interiors, and then outside the hollows you have polish. Now the bezel is a calculator bezel. The Navitimer, whether you believe it first came out in 1952 or 1954, was Breitling's first complete flight calculator, and it's actually fairly easy to use. So the way this works, and I'll show you real quick, is that it's generally for division and multiplication, and then there are calibrations on here that allow you to gauge things like airspeed, ground speed, drift, rate of climb, or fuel consumption. So it was a flight calculator, though the first Breitling circular slide rule watch was the Chronomat in the early 40s. So let's say I want to divide 70 by 2. But what I'm going to do is take 70, and I'm going to put 70 over 2. So we have this logarithmic scale circular slide rule. So 70 divided by 2, you're going to have to keep a mental decimal because it doesn't give you them. 70 divided by 2 is 35. Now, if I were dividing 7 by 2, it would be 3.5. You got to keep that in mind. Now, let's say I want to multiply 30 by 3. What I'm going to do is put 30 over the index. The index is 10. Just remember that. The index is 10 on the inner dial. So 30 times 3, I'm going to go to 3, and I read just above 30, 90. So that's how that works. Now, the dial has a combination of blue, silver, and a few splashes of red. We have sunken sub-registers for the time, and each one has a very subtle concentric pattern inboard. We have applique indices, which are steel and rhodium plated like the hands themselves. We'll do a quick loom shot here. Fair enough, easy to see. and the dial has a blue metallic sunburst. You can see that Breitling, with their little B logo, no longer has wings because George Kern wants you to think of Breitling as the land, sea, and air sports watch company, not just aviation. We have 2 subsidiary setting modes. We have hacking or stop seconds. Then we also have a quick set system. Let me just make sure we're not in the date change danger zone here. Oh, we were. See, that's why I always make sure I wind solidly past danger. Never set a watch's date between 8 p.m. and 3 a.m. It's a general rule. Okay. Now you see I have a quick set system for the date. Okay, turning it all over, you can see caliber B01. Previous to George Kern, it was very rare. You can see the old style logo is still on the clasp, but it was very rare for a Breitling, even an in-house caliber Breitling, to have a display case back. That changed. So now you can see the movement inside. It's Breitling manufactured caliber B01, which first debuted on the Chronomat B01 in 2009. As you can see, it is a column wheel chronograph. It's an automatic winding caliber with a 70-hour power reserve. It uses both column wheel and vertical clutch. The column wheel makes sure that the chronograph feels and sounds crisp. Then the vertical clutch ensures that it can engage without jumping. And if you want to just leave it running with the vertical clutch, there's no additional hazard to the movement. You can do that. It beats away at 4 beats per second. It pivots on 47 joules, and it's adjusted in 5 positions. It is a COSC certified Swiss chronometer. Now, of course, the watch is an aviation timepiece, so it's not highly water resistant, 30 meters. You can see the balance beating away at 4 hertz or 8 beats per second, and you can see that it uses Edachron fine regulation, which means it can be regulated quite precisely. You can also see the shock protection spring is KIF. So this is actually a good-looking movement. It wasn't designed for display casebacks, but in the era of Kern and display casebacks, the B01 has proved to be surprisingly attractive and surprisingly in demand, as Tudor uses the same movements with a few modifications on, for example, its Black Bay chronograph. So reach out to Team Mosso at thewatchbox.com for purchase and pricing details.